Welcome. Today we're going to make a holder for a webcam because I have a webcam at my computer and I need it about 8 inches above the bottom of the desk there. So we're going to, instead of buying one, we're going to make one. So, got a slab of clay. I took a rolling pin and I've angled it so it goes from wider to thinner just to give it a little additional strength once I wrap it around. So, we're going to if I use it at the angle, it will actually stay at one spot. Okay, so there's that. I'm going to do a dry fit, make sure it sticks. Yeah, it's about the angle I want. Because there's going to be a webcam, I'll have to put a blocking back here too, so that's fine. Okay. Okay. But I am going to want some texture on it. And I'm going to use a tree bark pattern. If you go over it a few times, the pattern does stick better. Okay. So there's that. I've got marked where my thickest points are so it tapers up. It's going to be something like that. See it there? Put him to the side for a second because we're also going to need a base. So if I carefully hold this will tell us roughly how it's going to go. I'll need to angle it back a little bit more, but I can do that afterwards. Because it's going to be leaning with its weight back, you're going to want it to be flared out to give it a little additional strength. Something like that. Okay, just going to put these to the side for now. I don't have any plastics, I put it underneath this just to try and keep it a little damper. Didn't really work. Okay, I'm going to examine this. I'm going to put the Athabasca pottery stamp on it. And my initials. Okay. So now we're going to determine if it is straight. I'm going to trim this up a little bit more. Looks good enough for me. I'm going to add some pattern on this one too. Whereas that one I did all in one direction, I'm going to do this one in a different one, so it's going to have a dappled effect to it. Kind of like grass being blown in the wind. See? Making sure it's all good and trimmed up. Okay, so I got that. I'm going to need a board and some plastic for this, so I will be right back. And we're back. I got a board here for support. So check the piece, initials and stuff stayed. Okay, so now we have this. So I'm going to leave this on here for a bit just so it has time to stiffen up. That one just sit there. He's done as far as I need him to do. So I want him to lean back. I am going to trim this a little bit. So the webcam I have has a lip on the back, so it's going to want to stick onto something, so I have to add a little lip on the back here. Okay, so it will fit there. I need to use some slip and get my scoring tool. It's a little much slip. Okay, I'm going to put this one in. Okay. 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 Okay, so there's the lip I have. It only goes over a little bit. It's enough for what my webcam's gonna need. And now I could do just a plain piece of wood with grass and make it look kind of fancy, but what's the point of a tutorial if you don't do something a little exciting with it? So we have tools and we have molds and we have stands. And I don't think I've shown anybody the extruder yet. So I got a half circle. Twists on. Eventually, if it fits, finishes jamming. There we go. So there's our half circle. A little pug of clay. Apparently it wasn't thin enough. Didn't want to go in. Okay. And look at that. Cut this up a little tighter. So got that. Got a piece of clay. We're going to flatten it out. Got a 2-part flour here. If I line it up perfectly, making sure you do both sides so you see where the grooves are, I can press it together. Don't completely lift up, but you can get it in there and sandwich it in. And as long as it doesn't stick when you pull it apart, you get this lovely piece that you get to trim, or in my case, break out. I should have used a little bit of baby powder in here, but I didn't, and it might be biting me. Yep. So there's another lesson for you. Always use baby powder. So I'm going to clean this up, get some baby powder, and come right back with a clean mold and cornstarch baby powder. In our kiln, cornstarch will burn off. So, whoa, it's a little too much. This one flows very well. Just gonna dust it in the corner there. So now that's nicely coated in baby powder. I'm going to re-roll the piece of clay that we just finished breaking. We had too much last time, so I'm going to pull some off. Get this out of your way. Let's flatten this again. It's just a little wedgy guy. This time we're going to try and trim it before we open it and see if that makes a difference. Whatever you do, don't poke yourself with the sharp. You will know it, and you'll be the first to know it. See how much easier it comes out this time? Isn't it great when you do things the right way? So, it's a cute little flower. It's even 3D. Just gonna kind of flatten him out here. Actually, take some of the back off so he sits a little bit flatter. It's gonna kind of scrunch up a little bit as well. Okay. I'm going to do the edges of the leaves where they join. I'm just using the flat of this to give us the petal grooves back. You can kind of see that. There you go. Okay. Doesn't look pretty in the back, but you're not going to see that, so I'm not too worried about that. Just clean out the inside of the flower a little bit where a few pieces ran. So there's one flower. I want 3 flowers though, so we're going to grab a little bit more clay. I'm going to find my vegetables. You don't really need much, just a little dusting just so it can't stick. This might be a little too small. We're going to experiment and see. Oh yeah, it's too small. We're not going to try that. Okay, we're going to mold 2 of these together. Okay, got our disc. Overlap it. Line it up and squish. That worked pretty well last time, so we're going to trim it before we open it. It just came out. There were a few pieces sticking, so I was on the verge of needing more. So, the next one. Once more, I'm going to trim off some of the back so it doesn't poke out so far. To take our edge. That gives you your groove. Looks better in the final piece. Some of this you can wait until next class to clean up, like some of these little rougher edges. And that's where I'm going to wait to clean those up. But some things like those little grooves are best done today. Okay, just like last time, I'm going to flatten it down. And then I'm going to scrunch it up a little bit, just so the petals kind of puff up. It's easier when it's laying flat, so you just push it in and the only option it has is to go up. And it's all a little crunched flour. Let's try this again. We're only going to open it up a tiny bit. We're not going to open it up all the way. Oh, and it still came out like crazy. It's always best to do this over a plate, I think. Okay, let's put it over here where it can't do any damage. Okay, a piece of clay. Part of it is also how much flour or how much cornstarch is on my hands. It's also sticking to the clay, making it less sticky to my fingers as well. So it's getting both the stuff on here and the stuff on the piece of clay. So it's getting a double whammy. It came out very easily. So once again, so here's another flower. Now, if you wanted, you could take your tools and make these little tiny detailed lines a bit deeper. Never hurts. And it will make them more noticeable once you glaze them. So that's what I'm going to do with all these now. Let's see if I can show it to you. They don't need to be deep. Even just the smallest things will actually make a very big difference when it comes to glazing with the sinking glazes. Can I focus on that? There you go. Looks a little niftier. So we're going to go do that to all these pieces. Some of them still have very good veins in them. Can I focus on it? There you go. But if it's something that's going to be at a distance, sometimes subtlety isn't exactly the line that you want. It doesn't take long, and often it's these small touches that make such a big difference in the end. Or in the case like that, I just ruined my centerpiece. But we'll patch that back up. There we go. Okay, those are 3 flowers. Now, you're probably going to be watching this. Just make sure I curve him tightly just so he sticks to the general shape I'm after. Okay, because I'm right-handed, I have to work like this, so don't mind me. This is our extruder. Don't make too much at once. It's got a very high tendency to crack. play around with things. They aren't anchored down until you slip them, so don't hesitate to lift and play and peel and... I think that's where it was, right? Or something like that. Double check that it's up high enough. Okay, so tap it down. These little bits are very renowned for cracking. Don't be surprised. Just get a little bit of slip, a little bit of softer clay. These bits here have powder and they've been exposed to the air, so they really aren't ideal for this. So just take a little piece, patch it over, bit of slip. Because this one I left it smooth, it's quite easy just to put a little bit of slip and rub it in. And then just clean up the edges. Also just going to clean up the little bits of slip that ran out from when I was moving it. So there goes that. There we go.
Hello. How are you?
Okay, so we're going to do that. And I got some. I could have used these branches too, but yeah. We use what we use. Okay, once more. Let's put some baby powder in this time. We really don't need them to stick like our past ones did. Just typical mold. Just push it in. Trim off the excess. So. I find it easier to use my palm. It's got the, gives you a nice flat base. Then you just turn it upside down and you pop it out. You get a nice little leaf. Once again, just like the flowers, you can leave the subtle veins there if you like, or you can go ahead and deepen them for a greater effect. There we go. It will lose a little bit of the sharpness when we go to clean it. So there's one. Oh, let's put a few more in. Use more powder.
I should probably run because I could have a project halfway done here, so. Okay, love you both. Bye-bye.
Okay, so there's that. Leaf number 2. And just because all the same leaves will be a little bit crazy, we're just going to do a smaller one as well here. Okay. Small one. Okay, so you can see it. It's pretty tiny. So there, we have 3 leaves, 3 flowers, and you're going to be doing this many, many times, is to rearrange, 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 and just see where everything fits. Don't think you can quite see it. It's not tacked on, so I really can't move it much. But now that I'm thinking of it, because I'm going to have a clamp up here, I can't have this flower quite so far up, which means I have to move it again. Which also means I shouldn't have slipped this line down quite so early, but I didn't use that much slip, so it is movable still. Okay. So that will allow for my clamp. So I'm just going to do a quick measurement here. I'm not going to do this leaf just yet because he may have to move, but the rest I quite like where they are. So before they do decide to fall off on me, I'm going to anchor them in with lots of slip. And the backs had marks on them already. So does the bark actually. When you push down to anchor, don't push too hard. You could get rid of the texturing on your flowers. And that's never fun. Some of the small little bits of dry stuff, it's often better to wait until the cleaning stage to get it off. So. So there we go. So I've had this mold for a while. I've never tried it yet. So let's see if I can get just a little bit of baby powder in this thing. I'm just going to rub it in because it didn't spread evenly, of course. Okay, so I'm going to give this one a shot. Okay. This one could be interesting. I've never had to do this one before. The hardest part is that there's going to be lots of little openings behind here, but there's a bunch of these little stuck up pieces as well that I want to get pieces into because they're kind of what makes it. More clay. If you do put more clay in over top, make sure you don't trap any air bubbles inside because those will blow in the kiln when they go to fire it. It's often easier to do this on a flat surface. So you can tell what spots are low. sometimes it's these little details that make all the difference. So I'm just going to take my time. This is either going to make or break my piece. Okay, so most of these pieces are so thin that they are going to be very, very delicate. So let's see if I can get this out without breaking anything. Just free up the edges. And then see if we can't convince it that it actually wants to come out. Okay, so quite a few didn't, but I did get this, which in my mind works very well. I'm just going to clean up a few of these leafy edges where they'd overrun, where there had been silicone there before. I don't want to do it in this because then I'll dig too big grooves. Once again, this is a sharp tool. Please do not stab yourself. Okay. I'm going to slip this. I have to watch it because it is trying to break on most of the grooves. So I'm just going to do the bare basics that I need to get this on. So the slip will bind it down here. Then when I go to glaze it, that will basically seal it on very well. So there's our grass with our flower and vine growing out. Hadn't taken me that terribly long. And of course, the more detail you add in the building stage, the better it looks, but also the more fun you're going to have when glazing. So I'm going to go ahead and clean this up a tiny little bit. Most are spots I had overlapped in the back, so I'm just tidying them up. Many of those broken tips I'm just also pointing as well, so they look like they were originally intended to be like that. So for example, I'm not sure you can see it, but right here, some of them had broken off. So I'm just going to kind of cut them and gently tease the one a little further out into a point, so it looks all like it was intentional. So there we go. Our overlapping one, I'm just getting a few more branches out too. So that's our basic. I think I'm going to leave it at that for the second. How sturdy are you? Okay, so he is still quite flexible. I'm going to go take him to the hair dryer for a few minutes just to stiffen up enough that I can actually get him on here and sealed. So I'll be back in 5 minutes. We're back, and as somebody probably noticed, I forgot to slip this little guy down. So we're going to do that. There we go. And it is a little bit stiffer. It is still going to be fragile, so we will have to watch that. So now he can go away. I'm gonna brush these things out of the way. Never finished using him. Okay, so I want him near the front. I don't quite need him to wing quite this far back, so I'm going to put this to the side before I break him, because that'd be something typical to do in one of these videos. Trim him a bit more as well. Trim him. Oh, the whole thing's getting a trim. The reason I'm trimming it is that I know there's not quite this much space by my computer where it's going to be sitting. So I'm just trying to get it down to what I need and what will hold. And if I end up putting a flat piece in the back later on to prop them up, so be it. Okay, that's more reasonable. And just because I did those edges, I'm just going to smooth them over again. Make them look as if they weren't cut. There we go. Okay, so we have our base. It's flat. Got our front. It's there. Got our back. That has its one support beam. This one, the bottom end, is going to require one as well, but I'm going to see if I can't get him on here first. Okay. So he is angled back, so he is sitting at a bit of an angle. Kind of like this. So of course he's going to definitely need some support and some slip. This stage is very be gingerly. It's not a fun stage to play around in. Okay, so let's put him here. Where can you guys see this? There we go. So this will allow me to work with this. Bunch of slip once again. And always make sure you try and support the edges, just because, as you can see, I just broke something off. So also watch where your fingers are in the back. I seem to be very good at breaking things today. All I'm doing now is I'm just smoothing things up so they're a little bit tighter. There goes another piece of grass. We're doing good today. Okay. I'm also making sure when I look that it's kind of even with the bottom. This will give it a little bit more space for grip. Also just bring my thumb down to close up these gaps a bit more. Make it a bit sturdier. Get that little bit of support. It's just so delicate right now. I'm using mostly motion, not pressure, to smooth things out. So the back of this is not going to look pretty. But in all honesty, I don't need people looking at the back of it, but we'll still smooth it up a little bit just in case. Okay, so there's that. We're going to put a big amount of slip down here. This is going to be our glue. It's going to hold it for us, hopefully keep it from toppling. Okay, so I'm going to very carefully pick him up. Hopefully don't break any more pieces of grass, which are kind of delicate right now. Oh, I got one piece of grass here that's trying to break on me, so I'm just going to seal him a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so now we're going to lower him down. guarding him kind of carefully so you guys can see. My bit is here. Because this is soft, I can actually push him in without worrying too much about the outside. Just watch as you push in. It could make this guy bend out. So once again, just watch your bending. And you very likely will end up using tools for this, just because your fingers often cannot get in here to, whoop, as you can see, I almost bent it there. It was starting to go. Slip. I'm just going to clean up these edges in case somebody does get an angle view on it. If you really wanted to get sticky, you could even take your mold back and go tack it over the back again. Make it look as if you hadn't done as much smoothing as you actually did. So he's staying stable for the second. What I want to do is I want to lift him up and make sure that, oh, there we go. See, I could tell he was tipping backwards. So he wasn't quite as straight as I was pretty sure he needed to be. So I'm going to push in the back while bracing the front. So there we go. Okay. So as you can see, his front still isn't quite all the way down, nor his sides. And picking up like this probably isn't helping either. So. So now as you can see, he's staying far more straight. This is more the angle he was supposed to stand the first time. Okay, I'm just going to lower this camera a little bit so you guys can see more easily what I'm doing. Is that better? Kind of, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here's our grass. Because our back is anchored, it's now wise to also anchor the front as well. So this can be done with little bits of stones. If you want to do a little row of stones in front. If you want to do a few little wicks of grass, and just do pretend pieces of grass. Just little twirls and secure them in. It also gives it that additional 3D look while giving it a little bit more strength. It's not much of a strength here, but okay. Let's get it down a little bit lower so I can see what's going on here. So I can see a few pieces aren't anchored in here. So I'm going to take a little bit of clay. This is your tedious part. We're going to go in and put in little balls of clay. Drag the slip closer. It doesn't need to be all the way over there. And often your tools when you're in this delicate thing will be a great help to you. In this case, I'm just trying to make it look like a continuation of this one strip of grass here. Or if you want, now's your time to add rocks to give you your additional third layer. Just make sure they don't look too tacky. You can add little bits of mushrooms if you wanted. That's completely up to you. Okay. So I'm going to do rocks. I'm actually going to bring it over the grass. I'm not sure you can see that. make it look as if it's hiding the grass behind it. I'm going to grab my texture and just add some dots to the rock, make it look rock-like. So that's basically one little miniature anchor there as it sits. I can go around and go do lots of other things like that. It is going to need some stuff here, so even if all you do is take little bits of clay, turn them into your little miniature snakes, stuff some slip in these holes, and just get something to help bind their bigger gaps. Sometimes even just putting the slip in sides enough to give you a little bit more of an edge. Just something that when it dries gives it a little bit more strength. As you can see for that one, you can't have to watch him here, he's still fragile. You can't even really tell I added him. He's just a little bit of a fuller section, which will be the angle I'm going to be going with here. Now that I think about it, if I look at the top, it's all pretty plain. I can texture up that one as well, or I can leave it plain. In this case, I'm going to make it look as if it was the edge of the bark. And then the inside. It's actually a little too dry to do that too. Could have been a thought for the future. Possibility of one day. Okay. So yeah, I'm going to keep doing this. Try not to break your grass. It's going to want to break. Your small thin pieces will dry first. They'll get very brittle. Be very careful. Oops, sorry, careful with them. I'm just going to pull them a little bit closer to the edge so I can get at his gaps there a bit better. You can always use your extra patterns to come around behind it and add a little bit more texture. It's too tight of a corner to get into. I'm just going to use the edge of this cloth here to add some texturing back into it. It's not quite like the original, but it's better than nothing. So now I can go back and add some more detailing. Take care of any details that got blotted out. Some of this can be left for the cleaning stage as well. Yeah, that spot right there is a little too big, I think. We need another rock. All those fails, add a rock. It's amazing what they can cover. And that rock's too big, so let's go for a smaller rock. If I really wanted to get decorative, I could do an extra row, but it'd make it look too much row-like, and that's not quite the angle I'm after with this one. A pretty big gap here that I do want to fill because it is at the end. If it's going to topple, that's going to be where it's going to want to go. slip in. Got a nice piece of soft clay that's apparently far too big to fit in that little hole. There we go. As I'm smoothing it, it's actually turning into grass kind of here. So if I just deepen the lines, it actually continues the effect. Not perfectly, but it works. And a nice half thought. We have these lovely little branches here. This stuff's already starting to dry and it's cracking. Not that fond of it. It'll have to get recycled. Gonna get a bit of soft clay. Cover him up so it stays. Still too much. I got the end of a branch here, so it's got the end of a branch. It's got a bit of clay in it. So I'm going to peel him out. And we have our rocks, and we're going to have a stick. And it's not going to be easy to tell what it is until it's actually glazed. So I will have to keep in mind what it's supposed to be. And then paint it brown to match the stump, and that's when it will click that it's a stick. But that's another way to cover up bits of strange stuff. It also has like a band-aid between the two levels. So we got a stick, got two rocks. I'm gonna add a third rock, but not evenly, so it's nice and off balance. So I need a smaller rock this time. The other ones are a little too big. Put a little bit of slip on it. Not sure if you guys can see it any easier. There's this one hole right about here that I don't quite like the looks of. And the smaller rock looks much better, by the way. Just gonna add holes. And actually, he looks so good, that's a little dinky tiny rock. I think we're gonna add two more. We're going to keep them small, and we're going to keep them oval. There's little itty bitty things. He's so small, I'm using a tool to put slip on the back of him. I'm going to put him in this big gap right beside this other one here, just to act as an extra support as well. This will be very delicate as it dries. Once it's fired, it won't be so bad, but it's still going to be its weak point is that. Put another small rock here. One thing that I could do, well actually, once I glaze it, it's going to be fine. I'll have to put about 3 or 4 coats on the back, and that will seal it very well. So once it's glazed, it's basically being held together by glass. So this is the strong stuff. So okay. Got another rock. Add a little bit of slip to my rock. Then we're going to have the branch propped up on the rock. So there. Okay. See if I can lift it without doing any damage to this thing. So there we go. Okay. And there's our back. It's still quite gooey. But it's got a nice firm base to it now, so. Okay. One thing you're going to want to watch is that this end might curl up as it dries because it's so thin. So when I go back, I'm actually going to, before I cover it, put a weight on this so it can't curl up. It'll also keep it from doing that. So as I do that, I also want a little additional strength while it's sitting here, so I'm going to do this. And actually better yet, just put the can here. So that will give it a little additional bracing. Just so the can doesn't slide, I'm going to use a little bit of my older clay here and anchor the can and just squish this guy in. There. Now, can won't move, and if I put some anchors in the corners, this guy won't move either. As they dry, they'll just fall off and there won't be any problem at all, but that should hopefully keep everything else from shifting. So there is going to be my new webcam stand.